say it right this time?
You did? Well done.
Thank you. Finally. I should say the mezzanine level is ready. Right there. Do you think we're on?
Yes, we
Oh, here we are. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Education. It is Thursday, May 9th. I thank you all for being here with us this evening. I would just ask for, I do want to say something very quickly. It is Staff Appreciation Week, and some of you have probably been involved in some activities at your schools, and hopefully the teachers are all feeling very loved. But just on behalf of the Board of Education, I do want to thank all of our staff, our administration, our bus drivers, our food service workers, our custodians, our teachers, our paras, our social workers, our counselors, principals. Like, we do appreciate everything that you do every day for kids. So thank you very much. We hope that you are feeling very celebrated this week. I know there's lots of activities at the schools, and some of you may have been to some of those, but hopefully that's going on for all of you as well. I've seen some pictures. It's nice to have that social media to see all the different things that are going on at the different schools, the flowers and the lunches and all that kind of stuff. So I just want to say thank you, and I would ask for a roll call vote at this point, Mr. Mena.
Okay, Trustee Cook is absent.
Yes.
Trustee Hood.
Here.
Trustee Mena is here. Trustee Murphy.
Yes.
Trustee Roney.
Here.
Trustee Ruskin.
Here.
Trustee Smith.
Present.
All right. If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Perfect. I would entertain a motion to approve our agenda before we get started with the meeting. Thank you. Mrs. Hood?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
All right.
Support.
Been moved by Mrs. Hood and supported by Mr. Mena. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Motion carries 6-0. Next, we are moving on to our student board member report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you. We have two high school students here this evening. We'll ask them to introduce themselves and give their report.
Good evening. My name is David Tola. I'm a junior at Novi High School. From academics, our AP and IB exams run from May 6th to May 17th, 2019. Good luck to all students taking the AP and IB tests. In student and teacher activities, congratulations to those DECA students who competed in the International Career Development Conference. Novi had 18 students place in the top 20 and 8 students place in the top 10. The team of Ashley Fan and Noah Bean received a second place award as well. For the staff and senior softball game, the staff will take on the seniors in the annual softball game on Thursday, May 16th, 2019 at 3:30 p.m. T-shirts are on sale for $10 each. All proceeds will go to the Novi SAD Club.
Hello, my name is Chris Oshana. I'm a senior at Novi High School. Also in student and teacher activities, congratulations to our Novi High School choirs as they participated in the State Chorale Festival last week. All 4 choirs received top rankings at the festival. The Senior Honors Convocation for the class of 2019 will be held on Wednesday, May 29th, 2019 in the auditorium. The doors open at 5:45 and the event begins promptly at 6:30. Students that will be acknowledged will receive invitations in early May. The Suicide Prevention and Community Discussion. Oakland Community Health Network is hosting a community discussion on understanding and ways to prevent suicide across all age groups on Thursday, May 23rd, 2019.
In athletics, good luck to the boys and girls varsity track and field team competing in the KLAA conference at Novi High School tomorrow. Also, good luck to the girls tennis team as they compete in the KLAA conference tournament this weekend at Novi High School. Finally, good luck to the following teams who are competing this weekend: boys baseball, girls softball, boys golf, and girls soccer.
Lots going on. Yours wrapping up, though. You guys excited about that?
Yes.
Yes? You're going to be back in another year, we know, but
Chris is probably more.
Chris is probably
Yep.
more excited than us.
Counting down the
But-
days.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And that staff student softball game, I know that's always a really fun event. And so, do you know what time it is? Is it right after school?
3:30.
3:30? Sorry, I missed that. Got everything else. Terrific. Well, thank you. Thanks for being here and for sharing our board member report. I know you're going to be presenting a little bit later too, so I'll just ask you to hang tight at the table. And We will move on to our award recognitions and presentations. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Tonight, we're very excited to be able to introduce our new Parkview principal, and I will turn to Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Tonight, it is my privilege to introduce Mrs. Laura Carino to the board as our next principal at Parkview Elementary School. Mrs. Carino currently serves as principal at Bentley Elementary School in the Plymouth Canton Community School District. She's also served as a principal at Buchanan Elementary School in the Livonia Public Schools and as a first grade teacher in the Ann Arbor Public Schools, as well as Loris Academy in Southfield. Mrs. Carino impressed our hiring committee with her deep knowledge of early literacy, her experience in implementing and maintaining strong systems of support for all learners, and most importantly, her love for children. I am pleased to welcome Mrs. Carino to the Novi Community Schools, and I would invite her to the podium to share her own introductory comments.
Great. Hopefully she knows.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have wanted to work in the Novi Community School District for as long as I possibly can remember, so this absolutely feels like a dream come true. I love working with kids, and I love being a principal, and I cannot wait to officially become a Wildcat. So I am so anxious to meet the Parkview staff and students. I'm going to be popping over there next week, and so meeting all the kids and the staff and parents. So I'm very, very excited. I just cannot wait for school to start. So I know a lot of times educators at this point in the year are counting down, but I am counting down until school starts. So I am just very excited for this opportunity. I want to thank my husband, Chris, for all of his support. We have 3 great kiddos. We have a middle school student, our son named Carter, who is 12, and we have 2 girls, Caitlin and Courtney. They could not be here tonight because Carter has a middle school band concert, so he is there with his sisters cheering him on with my parents. So they wish they could be here, but I know that they will be at many Parkview events to come. So I just want to say thank you again for this opportunity, and I'm so excited to be in Novi. So thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah. We are happy to have you, and thrilled for our Parkview. Jen Mikos has been a fantastic principal, so I'm sure that you will get shown the ropes once you get over there, and she'll do a good job of introducing you and acclimating you to the school over there. Are there any other comments or questions from the board?
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. We will, I'm sure, hear more and more about things at Parkview, and I look forward to seeing you at some of the events. All right, next is our Student Wish Week recognition.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Novi High School students spearheaded the Student Wish Week this year and recruited help from Novi Middle School students and the early childhood education students. And this evening, Ms. Carter and Ms. Shapinski will introduce the Student Wish Week participants and from the high school, and we'll also introduce the students from Novi Middle School. We'll start with Ms. Carter.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Good evening, Board of Education members and cabinet members. As you all know, it's another great day to be a Novi Wildcat. I'm so delighted to be here alongside Mrs. Rachel Shapinski, who is our Novi High School Student Council Advisor. We have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing to you our sensational Wish Week leadership team, the executive board members of Novi High School Student Council. Before we allow our student leaders to share their brief perspectives with you, we would like to sincerely thank Novi Middle School and the Early Childhood Education Center, who partnered with our high school to raise funds for our Wish Week. Our original goal was to raise $10,000, and we are elated to share with you that we raised $30,200 for Make-A-Wish. The wishes of 4 children will come true as a result of our collective efforts. I have been blessed to work at Novi High School for the past 19 years, and I must say that the outpouring of love, excitement, and joy on display that week is something that I will cherish in my heart forever.
Tonight we have our 4 of our 6 executive board members with us. Ann George and Chris Oshana, who oversaw the fundraising committee. Dan Netter, who led the publicity committee. David Toloff, who spearheaded the carnival committee. Jill Harrington led decorations committee, and Anna Bieberstein organized the charity basketball committee. This dynamic team of student leaders initiated a district-wide charity effort that was able to bring our entire school district and community together for a great cause. Their unified action is a prime example of what students can do to make a difference and the lives of others. Student voice and leadership matters. Thank you to everyone who helped make the 4 wishes of children come true.
Good evening, board members and cabinet members. So 2 weeks ago, Chris Oshana, David Toloff, Grace Price, and Drew Van Gotham and myself were honored at the Make-A-Wish donors banquet. And this banquet, we were honored with the awards of the Make-A-Wish Joy Award, right here. And we were also honored with the Sue Jandernoa MVP Award, this one. And in addition to this, we were honored to meet Jackson. Jackson is a Wish kid who has been fighting for, I think, most of his life with gastrointestinal disorder. His wish was to meet Justin Verlander, who's now a Houston Astros, son of a Detroit Tiger. But his wish was to meet Justin Verlander, and he shared his story and the bravery that we saw him just put on such a brave face, and he's just been through so much, and it was just a true honor to be in his presence and also to receive these awards as well. So that is my presentation.
That's fantastic.
And we also have middle school students here this evening, and we would invite the middle school students to come up to the podium and just introduce yourself and say hello to the board members. We
No.
The middle school participated in Wish Week, and this was a collaborative effort with the high school, and we're very excited that this was able to happen. And so we'd like to recognize the middle school students as well. So if you could just introduce yourself and say hello to the board, we would appreciate that.
Hi, my name is Dia Shrigan. Hi, my name is Layla Crowley. Hi, my name is Shanitha Balraj, and I'm in 7th grade. Hi, my name is Serena Worm. I'm in 8th grade.
And we're appreciative of you being here this evening, and we know that you played an instrumental role in helping the Wish Week be a success. And did any of you get to shave your teacher's head there at the middle school?
Oh, that was very enjoyable. Yeah, it was quite a thrilling day.
Well, we appreciate all the effort that you gave at Novi Middle School, and appreciate you collaborating with Novi High School and the students there to make Wish Week a very successful event.
Is this the first time there's been a collaboration between the middle school and the high school on something like that? Fantastic. So let's do it again, right?
We're hoping to make it district-wide,
Yeah.
ideally. It's going to be our district charity every year.
Seemed like a lot of people got involved that weren't involved in the high school and the middle school too, in terms of donations. So, fantastic. Questions, comments?
Will somebody tell me about the coin stall? Because that looked like it was phenomenally successful. And I just wonder, is that you, Chris?
Yes.
I saw your text last week. Thank you again for that.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of you. My daughter sends me a random text in the middle of the day, and it was Chris. Took over her phone, and I said, who is this? And then who had to take all those coins? What'd you do, take them to Coinstar? I hate to see you walking into the grocery store with them.
Yeah. So the idea of coin stalls, we originally got it. I believe Troy Athens High School. They are by far the high school in the entire state of Michigan that raises the most money every year. In the past recent years, it's been well over 6 figures. So we really got a lot of inspiration from them, talking with a lot of their students at a couple different leadership conferences that we've attended. So the idea is essentially students brought in spare change, dumped it all into one pile, and for 4th hour on Wednesday of Wish Week, the teacher had to count all of the change, add it all up before class could start it all. So in 1 hour alone, we raised, what, 6,000? In an hour and 30 minutes, technically, because of the lunches and all, but it was really amazing to see the community come together. And while the incentive might have been to lose a little bit of instructional time, I think $6,000 was well worth it. Yeah, so it was really exciting, and we are very elated with how it all went down.
Yeah. No kidding. And to be getting an
It's a
award
lot
on
of
top of
change.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it went to the bank. Yeah, 2 carfuls, I believe.
Yeah.
2 carfuls.
Oh, well, $6,000.
What'd you put 'em in?
My.
Pillows, cases?
Lots of manila envelopes, I believe. Yeah.
That's
Well, it
awesome.
sounds like it was a great event for everybody that participated, and just to share a small part in it, of those people that contributed, we thank them as well. I mean, that's a fantastic turnout, so way to set the bar high. So next year, I guess you're gonna set the goal a little higher, maybe. This year. Anyways, thanks for coming,
Yeah,
you guys.
thanks,
We
guys.
really appreciate you being
Congratulations.
here and participating, making it such a success. Way to represent. All right, next we will move on to our reports to the board. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you. This evening, we have the pleasure of having Dr. Weber approach the podium because in October of 2016, Michigan lawmakers passed Public Act 306, an effort to boost reading achievement in the state of Michigan. The intent was to help more students be proficient in reading by the end of 3rd grade. The law also states that beginning in the 2019-2020 school year, the child may be retained in 3rd grade if they are 1 or more grade levels behind in reading at the end of 3rd grade. So tonight, Dr. Weber will present and discuss Public Act 306 as it relates to the Novi Community School District. Dr. Weber.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Good evening, the Novi community, and Ms. Carino, I'm glad you're here to enjoy a little bit of this literacy conversation. And a fantastic job to everyone on Wish Week. Stunning. I was in Miss Jensen's class, who I think was who you shaved her head. And I hadn't seen her in a while, and I walked in the other day and I thought, oh no. Like I thought something might be wrong. Right? And then I realized, like, oh wait, no, she was the one you guys chose to target for that. So it's fantastic. So good stuff. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Melissa Matson and Darby Hoppenstedt, Jeff Dinkelman for helping put this report together, and all the teachers in our community school district who, when I share some numbers with you at the end of this, will also speak to their efficacy, as well as our administrators. So, an update on the 3rd grade reading legislation. We gave this report on January 18th of last year. We modified it a little bit to give you an update. And this is really, for new board members, this is a little bit of an update or a lesson on what we are grappling with as a school district and across the strait with something that I would label as an unfunded mandate. PA 306 of 2016 requires schools to identify learners who are struggling with reading and writing and to provide additional help. That's great. 3rd graders may repeat 3rd grade if they're more than 1 grade level behind beginning in the 1920 school year. And that's really what this bill is known as, and this legislation is known as, is a retention bill. What we know about retention, it may be one of the least effective ways to promote student learning. 98.6%, I believe, of our students in the Novi Community School District graduate. So, if we're going to measure our efficacy as a community school district and we look at the numbers, the idea that I want you to think about is the effectiveness we have as a K-12 system. Children are identified from assessments given to K through 3rd grade students within 30 days of the first day of school, individualized reading, and this is part of legislation, improvement plans, or the charmingly termed IRIP, developed within 30 days of assessment if reading concern is identified. Individual reading improvement plans created by the teacher, principal, and parent, along with any other pertinent school personnel. Plan describes the reading intervention services the students will receive to remedy the deficiency. Plan will be in place within 30 days of the student demonstrating a reading deficiency. So fortunately, with our MTSS system and the generosity of our school board and community, being able to staff each of our spaces with not only literacy interventionists, but a robust internal accountability system, which allows us to identify those students in need. Classrooms in K through 3, and Ms. Carino, you're gonna see this right up front. We have class sizes of 18, 19, 20 kids in our kindergarten classes, 20, 21 kids in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So as a community, we've made a commitment to literacy in a very holistic way rather than a punitive way. I'm very proud of that. Evidence-based core reading instruction is comprehensive and meets the majority of the general education classroom needs. If you go into Atlas Rubicon, anybody in the community, anybody in the world can see what we do from a reading and writing perspective. Other required components: intensive development of the 5 major reading components: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary comprehension. Instruction that is systematic, explicit, multisensory, and sequential. So Fortunate to be able to go into classrooms throughout the district, going into first grade classrooms, second grade classrooms, and really seeing best practice around literacy occurring in those rooms and those spaces. Always room for improvement. However, seeing us doing that in those early grades is something that brings me joy. This is provided during school hours in addition to regular classroom instruction, and we also provide parents or legal guardians the Read at Home plan. Fortunately, our partnership with the Novi Public Library has been extraordinary. Compliments to Ms. Farkas and the City of Novi for being incredible partners there. Also, the notion that districts would need to employ early literacy coaches to undertake these following tasks: to model effective instructional strategies, facilitate study groups, train teachers, comprehensive intervention reading programs, working with teachers and applying evidence-based strategies. We're very fortunate. For 9 years we've had an instructional coaching office, which is in conjunction with our very robust approach to literacy interventionists. So when you see the term literacy coach, realize that we have those in place in our community school district. Beginning in 2019-20 school year, for exiting third grade students, the 17-18 cohort of first graders will be the first group of third graders impacted. The Center for Educational Performance and Information, known as CEPI, will notify parents and schools of students who did not achieve a score of proficient on third grade state reading assessment within 14 days of the finalized score or June 1st. So what this means really is next year, the state of Michigan will be sending letters to our parents and notes to our parents that their student did not make it with that particular cut score. It'll be really interesting in the first year. I'm going to share some data with you. We pulled some numbers of students, what it would look like 3 years down the line. So I have numbers from third graders in 2015 and where they currently sit, or where they were sitting in 2018 as far as their proficiency. And I think what you're going to see is why this is something that I have a very hard time supporting. When you see the amount of growth that occurs just over time intervention, the notion of holding a student back for an entire year because of a score is something that detonates local control, and also from a standpoint of educational research is simply not sound.
Dr. Weber,
Yep.
could you address the June 1st deadline from the state? How early do we typically get our state assessment scores?
August.
So there is a June 1st deadline, but we have never received state scores before August, since I've been in the district for 8 years.
Retention can last no more than 1 year. So here are the allowable reasons for good cause exemption, and one of these in here really impacts our community school district in a very profound way, and that is the second bullet point. If a student has an IEP or Section 504 plan, that is a good cause exemption from retention. Student is a limited English proficient student with 3 years or less of instruction in English language learner program. So what that means, when I give you some of the numbers on what it could be, 50% of the students just on the first cut of English language learners would be exempted from the numbers I'm going to read to you, because our percentages are so high. So there are only a couple of community school districts in Oakland County that have the same type of English language learner distribution that we have. I believe Troy would be one, but certainly it would be us and Troy. Rochester Hills does not have nearly the numbers that we have. And the reason I'm using those districts as exemplars, when you take a look at our performance overall in ELA in Oakland County, would be in the top 3, and we're separated by a mere half percentage points. And so really, when you back out the EL numbers, our story, in my mind, is even more impressive in the work our teachers are doing in what we've done as a community school district. If a student has received intensive reading
Dr. Weber,
yeah.
we have a question or a comment.
Yeah, I don't know if you even know the answer to this, and I want to apologize because we could probably get an answer if we don't have one. But is this information included for parents on their notification as well?
From the state?
Yes.
Not sure. I mean,
I would hope.
We have not seen the letter.
We have not seen the letter, and really our goal would be to get ahead of this as much as we possibly can, informing parents of what is coming and what they need to know.
Okay.
And really knowing what we know about retention, doing everything we can possible as a community school district to help every single parent be able to avoid that outcome for their kids. When we have the resources that you all have allocated for our schools, whether it's low class sizes, reading interventionists, and so on, there is no reason we can't wrap around students and help them to get better. And then I can't wait to share with you what kind of declension that we have in the amount of kids that would need to be held back over just 3 years in our school district after third grade, and that will come at the end. But that's a great question, President Murphy, because if I were a parent and I got this letter that said your kid's going to be retained,
Right.
I'd like to know why.
That's exactly what I was thinking, but I like the idea that we would be communicating that.
And our hope is to have that prepared, so as soon as we get wind that they're coming out, that Dr. Matthews could send that out, boom, get it there in the mailbox before the state sends whatever missive that they choose to send.
We believe that during curriculum nights next year in third grade, we'll have information that we'll share with all parents to kind of give them a preview of what may come at the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Those are great questions. So our implementation, again, of 3 instructional specialists trained in early literacy, that would be in our coaching office, 5 literacy specialists. Ms. Carino, you've been in a number of districts. I'm sure this is kind of exciting for you to hear. The commitment that we've made to literacy and early literacy in our district is stunning. Modeling effective instructional strategies and so on, we've been through these. Model and coach whole and small group instruction with each K-3 teacher. This week I was able to participate in a full day of writing. Pathways work with every second grade teacher in the district. All of our elementaries have had that kind of intensive work around writing and that literacy is there. So our third grade yearly literacy plan, September, October, we'll identify our K-3 students through screeners. NWA is our universal. Develop reading plans, implement the plans, and progress monitor. And that's really where our MTSS system comes in and does a fantastic job of measuring student progress and providing help. In November, as Dr. Matthews said, parent-teacher conferences. We'll communicate at those events, share individual reading plans, and share family read-at-home plan. Again, I cannot thank the City of Novi and Julie Farkas enough for their work in helping us with that. Third graders take the M step in May, and my third grader just did. Luckily, he didn't come home and tell me he was the first one done. Identify students eligible for retention. Identify students who fall under good cause clause. To say that 3 times. Provide waivers to parents as requested, and really that's our strategy is to make sure that parents have full and absolute access to the waiver. And if that's something that they choose to do to avoid retention, that's something that we'd be in support of. Our next steps would be a district-wide communication to parents, developing good cause exemption retention process. So the entire piece of, so parents know if they get that letter, they'll know what to do rather than panic. And if it's, there's, in our mind, from the Office of Academics, there is no way it would be a surprise for a parent. That's not the first time that they're going to hear that their son or daughter may be struggling in literacy. Right? So we failed if the first time a parent ever had any idea that their kid may be struggling is when they get a letter from the state of Michigan. And I love my team, and I know the work they do and the staff that we work with, and I'm confident that parents will feel very good that we've done everything we can to help their child progress in their reading skills. This point of emphasis on retention effects, negative effect on academic achievement in language arts, reading, math, work study skills, social studies, and grade point average, which kind of is not good on any of those counts. Being retained 1 year, almost double the student's likelihood of dropping out of school. Threat of non-promotion is not a motivating force for students. Negative influence of peer groups on the beliefs of the retained student. There are moments where retention can work, and in the back of our minds we may think we know the student who was retained where it did work. But as Principal Carter's here, and as a former high school principal myself, I can tell you that there are 2 segments of kids that we would see struggling as they came through the high school. One would be a retained student. Imagine being an 8th grader and you're 15 years old. Okay? The next is actually advancement. So parents believing that it's good to skip kindergarten or maybe kindergarten in 1st grade, and they have a youngster arrive at a high school of 2,000 students who are 13 years old or 12 years old. There are reasons for developmental growth in those age levels that come into play there. And so that's what I would also say to parents who are thinking about advancing a student or retaining, that there are very real consequences in the world that we do. And Ms. Shapinski's nodding her head because she's seen it. And we do see it, right? So our job, in my mind, is to be good stewards, provide great information for our families, and be there for them. The final piece I'd like to share with you is looking at a data poll. So think about this. I'm going to write this down. In 2015, if we took a look at our 3rd grade cohort from 2015, the total number of students in that cohort who would be partially proficient or not proficient. There'd be 86 students.
So this is out of a group of
500.
typically 500.
Of 500 kids. Now, out of that group of 86, right off the bat, if you want to, feel free to cut 44 out of those who are going to be English language learners. This is the most conservative cut I'm giving you. So let's say that number is 86. If we track those very same students, the same cohort of students who took that assessment, there is a 43% declension in students who inhabit the not proficient or partially proficient. So we go from 86 students on that first cut in third grade reading to 49 by the end of sixth grade. Time, intervention, help. That's what we're about. And if you play the long game and look at this K-12 with 98.6% of our kids graduating from our high school, 88% of them going on to some sort of secondary education, those are the numbers we need to look at. Ms. Hood.
Dr. Weber, you went through those numbers too fast. I'm sorry. So
Sorry.
you said, at first I wrote down 44, and I thought those were the language learners, English learners.
They are.
And then you said 49 students, and I didn't get the segue between
Sure.
those two numbers.
So if we take a look at, 2015, if we look at the students in 2015 who took that M-STEP
In third grade.
Mm-hmm.
we would have a total of 86 students at that time that would be labeled not proficient or partially proficient out of a cohort of 500. That's the most conservative number because that's before we back out any students who would have good cause exemption, 504, IEP, or English language learners. Because our English language learner population is so high, taking a look at that number, we'd actually back out 44 from that 86 right off the first cut for that exemption. So that's where the 44 came in. If you want to remove that, though, and just play this out to the end of sixth grade, so the youngsters go through their fourth grade year, they go through fifth grade at Novi Meadows, they go through sixth grade at Novi Meadows, take the M-STEP again, we're down to 49 of that same cohort of kids without any backing out. So that's a 43.02% declension in students who are falling into those categories. And the big point to walk away from with this is that time and intervention are things that help kids learn in programming. So again, being the most conservative number, if we backed out every good cause exemption, right now we know we can back out 44. I don't want to guess on the 504 IEP end, but let's say we back out another 15 to 20 on that. Now we're really looking at a smaller number of kids that would be there. So this is one thing that I said to a new team member tonight. We were having a conversation, and I believe this wholeheartedly. Our community school district is one of the only school districts in the entire country that if we are willing to do what we need to do, we can be one of the very only places that can eliminate the opportunity or achievement gaps in a very real way. We hear a lot about achievement gaps. We hear a lot about opportunity gaps. In our district, because of the resources our community has provided, because of the parents that we have and the kids that we have, the teachers, the administrators, I believe that there is no reason that we can't bring that down to that reasonable number. And right there, the numbers I just showed you show how that's possible. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or wonderings? Mr. Mena?
Do think it's important to note that in third grade, you can have almost 11 months difference in age of the students in the grade. So in kindergarten, a student could have turned 5 on August 30th, and they could start kindergarten the next week. They might be in class with a student who turned 5 of October the year before, you know, and so they're 11 months older, and so to expect that just because they're in the same grade, all students are going to achieve at the same level is really kind of an inappropriate perception of what a school is like. Students mature and grow at different rates. It would be the same as if the state mandated that all third graders had to be 4 feet tall before they could go to fourth grade. This is kind of the same, in our view, kind of the same idea that students mature and grow and develop at different rates, and so we provide lots of support and assistance to those students to ensure that they will grow and make progress every year with the ultimate goal of graduation. And as Dr. Weber has said, we have 98% of our students who graduate from high school. So.
Did you have a question?
I did. So if a parent were to get this letter, what are their choices?
So the choices would be, they could say, I want my son retained or my daughter retained. The options they would have from us would be good cause exemptions, and we would help them navigate that. So there are, if you go back in the presentation, so if the parent or guardian requests a good cause exemption within 30 days of MD notification, they are able to opt their student, so to speak, out of being retained. And our goal as a community school district is to make sure that flight path is very clear for any parent who chooses to do so.
So where's I'm trying to understand, where's the unfunded mandate here? At least from Novi's perspective, because what you're telling us is we're providing a lot of the services now that these students need. What else do we need to provide under this law that we're currently not doing now?
Sure. So if we take a look at this, the largest unfunded mandate comes from the fact that they are requiring, the state government required districts to have literacy coaches in place and to hire those literacy coaches. I feel very proud of the fact that from our vision and our execution, we don't need the state to tell us what to do. We know what best practice is, we executed on that. We're also fortunate enough to have rising enrollment, which means we could actually afford to pay for said literacy specialists. It's an unfunded mandate in the sense that they are requiring school districts to do this, but not providing the money to do so.
But we're doing that now, right?
We are.
I mean, is there anything on this list now that is going to have an extra cost to the district that we're not doing now?
I think the extra cost that's already come up is the hours of putting together explanations, if we're looking at costs within Novi, the hours of trying to explain what this is, to be advocates and allies for our kids and make sure that we're not quiet about something that may not necessarily impact us directly because we have the vision to do the right thing, but is impacting kids throughout our state.
So we would know the parents who are getting these letters of students that are affected ahead of time, or we wouldn't know?
No.
We would not know.
The thing that makes me nervous, Willie, is the fluke of, so let's say that a student is trended just fine for K1, 2, 3, or K1, 2, and for whatever reason, let's say, I made a joke about it, but my kid went into the 3rd grade M-STEP and decided that he wanted to get done first to beat his friend, and went ahead, blew through it, did horribly on it, which isn't representative of it. That's a parent that I'm worried about, that this is an abnormality, that comes through. I hope that we can build something as a counterpunch to the state the parent getting the letter from CEPI. My faith in the detail, as Ms. Murphy had talked about, of CEPI providing the level of detail for that student or for that parent or family could be difficult. Also, the anxiety I can only imagine that would cause if a parent got a letter in their mailbox from the state and not from us.
Right. Did you have a question also, Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you. So listening to your presentation, am I correct in concluding that no matter what we do, there would be some number of students that would not meet the requirements?
Correct.
But am I also correct in understanding that if that happened to be 25 kids, that they get those letters, but the parent would have ample time after getting that letter to seek a good clause out? Is that correct?
That is
good
correct.
Cause.
And the piece is we need to make sure that we have all those ducks in line, as Dr. Matthews said.
Because that's where I see the cost. So I understood what you said correctly, but as Paul, who's not here, would know, or any of you, my son is on an IEP plan, and there's been days where he forgets to follow his routine in the morning, and he goes to school, and that happened 2 years ago, and he took an M-STEP test, and it was horrible, and the teacher's like, what happened, Marky?
Well, Tom, what you just did was personalize the fear that I have for kids around the state and in our community, which is what happens. Now, there's the good clause exemption there. However, the parent needs to know about it. The district needs to support that to make sure that happens.
But to Willie's question, if you've sat in one of our IEP sessions, there's 6 people sitting around that table. And that's a lot of manpower and hours and staff time, and you've got to put subs in the classroom for the teachers to be present for the IEP. So if we're adding 2 dozen IEPs or 504s, then Darby needs more help, or the problem is, we don't even know yet, but to get some of these kids not to be retained, which I'm crystal clear is not a great idea.
Not good.
It's gonna take time, money, and resources that we aren't currently spending to put these kids on an IEP. Right?
Or to provide the way out for students who are on an IEP so they don't further get ensnared in this.
Right.
Well, and it doesn't sound like they all need an IEP, but they need the IRIP,
Well, they need the good,
individual
they need
reading improvement plan,
or the
right?
good cause clause.
The parents would still need to,
Right.
we would still need to make sure that we executed that, because what the state's gonna wanna know, so now that you know the letter's coming from the state, our obligation will be to prove to the state that we did everything we could around that exemption, and that is noted within the student's educational record.
So last thing, and then I'll be done. So what's the current legislative update? Because I have been trying to keep up with that reading, and it's my understanding that there are some people in Lansing that don't think this is a good idea. And there are certainly other districts in southeastern Michigan that are gonna be devastated by the impact. I mean, devastated.
And
So, so what do we do?
So the two things on that, it will be interesting to see as this really gets close to the implementation date. Because, so in a place like Novi or a place like Rochester Hills or Birmingham, even though our numbers are low, it's still, in my mind, significant that we have. So Dr. Matthews, I think you've given some numbers before of some districts that, as Tom is talking about, may get hit hard. How many kids or percentages, if we could throw
There are
out?
some districts that have 90% of their third grade students that are not proficient or minimally proficient.
I've read that. And those aren't the districts that have our resources.
Correct.
All right, other
Yeah,
questions?
and just to be clear though, if a student gets a letter, it doesn't necessarily mean that he becomes a 504 or an IEP student, right?
No,
There's
I
nothing
think
there, right?
on that,
Yeah,
on that part of it, I think Tom was, your experience with your own son and so on, the good cause would be there, but we would still need to execute it. And 504 students as well. 504 is something that's grown tremendously in our district in the past 3-4 years. So that's another layer of students. But for us to make sure that we're doing right by your son and every student in the district, we need to make sure that the parents know exactly what to do, how to do it, and are clear on it. And from a standpoint of our office, we don't want to see any parent get a letter and be surprised or not know how to navigate that.
It is important to remember that this retention legislation is based on 1 day of testing out of 180 days of instruction. And so, a student may, a student may have a bad day on MSTEP day. Their dog died the night before. They're not ready for school. They missed the bus. They have an argument with their mom or dad, and all of a sudden they pop up as a student that doesn't score well on a test. And this legislation is kind of a sledgehammer as opposed to a scalpel when looking at students like that. And so our responsibility is to make sure that parents understand it, and then 2, that we help parents understand that we do not believe that retention is a viable strategy to help their child succeed.
Which is why when Steve and I talk about this, we're as precise as we are about how we feel about it. It's not a value judgment against the folks who voted for it or sponsored it or brought it forth. I'm an advocate and ally for 6,500 kids, and I need to speak for each of them regardless of who brought this to bear or not. And our job now is, because it's the law, is to navigate this in a way that we help our families. And when Dr. Matthews was talking about a difficult day, I think about our kindergarten through 4th grade teachers and principals who have went through 3 days of capacity building around the impacts of trauma on students. I think of our kids who are in our classrooms and classrooms around the state, who you may not be able to tell by, they may not have a 504 or an IEP, but what they bring to school every day is tragic. And the thought of a state test somehow being important to them, come on. And so that notion of what do we do to be the voice for those kids is, in my opinion, the obligation that we have. So, any other questions? Also, I want to thank a couple board members. Thank you so much for sending questions on this presentation ahead of time. It was very helpful in putting the presentation together to have those delivered ahead of time, just to give us time to make sure we found the numbers and put those together. So thank you for those of you who did that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the first opportunity for comments from the audience.
Oh, it looks like Miss Carter's getting up to give a comment.
Well, you have an early morning. This is the first opportunity for someone to address the board on anything on our agenda. If there is anyone that would like to address the board, we would just ask that you fill out a green card in the back and hand it to Mrs. Holly and then approach the podium. And we would ask that you keep your comments to about 5 minutes. Seeing no one, we will move on to our consent items. We have approval of minutes and approval of field trips. These are items that are routine in nature and they do not require a lot of discussion, so I would entertain a motion.
No motion.
Thank you.
That the Novi Community School Board of Education approve the consent items as presented.
Thank you.
I support.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Roney and supported by Mrs. Hood. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next is our personnel report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy, and I will turn to Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. This evening we have a very short personnel report. Only 2 items. They are both resignations. The first is Susanna Hobrath, ESL teacher at Orchard Hills, and the second is Lily Ma, 4th grade teacher at Parkview Elementary School.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion. Mr. Mena?
I move that we accept the personnel recommendation as presented.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Roney. I don't think we need any additional discussion unless somebody has a question about the resignations. Occasionally people have other things they want to do or their husband moves or things like that. So we won't get too personal with that. So I will call the question, right?
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next, we are moving on to bid package 10. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Bid Pack 10 was discussed at our last board meeting. It identifies 3 items, carpet replacements, a retaining wall replacement, and a dumpster enclosure project. We discussed this at our last board meeting. And if you have additional questions, Ms. Minnick is here to answer those. But if not, we would ask that the board would approve this Bid Pack 10 so that we can get this planned and on the calendar for completion this summer.
Okay, before there's questions, I would entertain a motion.
Just again, could you remind me about the dumpster enclosure?
The team decided not to move forward with that project. The cost came in extremely high.
Okay, and where was it planned for?
At the high school. It's kind of at the receiving end near the food service area.
Okay. Those dumpsters that lead up to the library?
Yeah.
That enclosure there.
Okay.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion. Mr. Smith?
I'll move that in the best interest of the Novi Community School District, the Board of Education award the 2019 projects to the following lowest qualified vendors. Carpet replacements to Cones Flooring of Wixom, Michigan, in the amount of $766,250, and retaining wall replacement to 6K Construction of Brighton, Michigan, in the amount of $90,050. Further, that the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations be authorized to expend the funds from the 2014 Capital Project Bond Fund.
Thank you. Is there support? It's been moved by Mr. Smith and supported by Dr. Ruskin. Are there additional questions?
Sorry about that. I forgot we
That's
needed to
okay.
take a
That's
motion
okay.
on this before we discussed.
okay.
Okay.
We can roll with that. Anybody have any other questions for, I know we went over this before. I appreciate the explanation on the dumpster enclosure. I will call the question. All those in favor of bid pack 10 being approved, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Motion carries 6-0. Next, we are moving on to information and discussion. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. The first item this evening is our policy updates and revisions. Governance and Policy Committee has reviewed the following policies for revision and updating and is bringing them before the Board of Education for information and discussion. Lusk Albertson recommended updates, modification to the Novi Community School District Policy Manual. This information was originally released to clients in November of 2018, but because of the district was in the process of completing its policy and administrative regulation manual, we held off sending it until those processes were completed. And so there are several policy updates. We'll review them briefly here. Most of them are minor in nature. The first is policy is recommending adding the word labor only to the policy, which is in the bylaws, policy 0003. And so the policy originally read, the board is represented at all negotiations. We're just adding the word labor negotiations to make that clear. The second policy is in 2000. It reflects changes required, as we mentioned this evening, to the third grade reading law as provided in the new school code. And so we're adding, to the extent permitted by law, the superintendent and building administrators in consultation with parents are responsible for placing students in schools and so on. And it also adds that the superintendent will promulgate administrative regulations necessary to implement the policy. And so the third grade reading legislation identifies that parents have the right to retain students in third grade. Our policy really identified that the district is responsible for placement of students. And so with that one little caveat, we had to add that language. The next policy, adding to the end of policy 2003 is a standalone policy. And it is on physical examinations and screenings, and you can see there that basically it says parents will be given the opportunity to opt out their students from all physical exams and screenings. Some physical exams and screenings that we might do in the district would be eye exams or dental exams at times. This is really not a policy that impacts us much in our district, but there are occasions when it would come into play. In personnel, because of the new, the vote in November of 2018 that legalized marijuana in the state of Michigan, we had to add some changes to the policy, and you will note the ones that are added there. They are the underlined words in the policy. And there's one phrase at the bottom of this policy, the school districts, and this would be the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, is directed to establish a drug-free awareness program to inform employees. So that's the position that would be responsible for doing that. And this makes it clear in this policy that notwithstanding state permissibility, the use and possession of marijuana and marijuana-induced intoxication are prohibited on school grounds. And then in business, only people like Ms. Minnick would understand why this is important, but it was evidently important to add the underlined part 2 CFR Part 200 to this policy for some unknown reason about federal procurements. My sense is that that's a very specific part of a larger piece of procurement standard there. And then the digital communication policy corresponds to some administrative regulations, and so there's a recommendation that we would add this policy as policy 8010. And it really addresses issues related to digital communication and issues that might arise in some digital communication.
So this is a standalone
Standalone policy, correct.
Okay.
And then the final policy is policy 5003 in purchasing. It is just the eliminating purchases in excess of that amount shall be brought to the board for approval. That's redundant because they have to be.
Okay. Are there questions? How about if we start at the beginning? Are there questions about the very first policy, the 0003, about labor? I mean, that's just clarifying because there are other negotiations, I suppose, that occur, like the bidding or whatever could be considered that. It just clears up confusion. Is there anybody that has a question about that? Okay, seeing none. The next is about the third grade reading. Obviously, that's one that we have to have. So unless there's questions about that one. Physical exams and screenings, Dr. Matthews explained that one. That's also a standalone policy because we don't currently have one that allows parents to opt out. Alcohol and drug-free workplace, that's necessary given the marijuana law and federal procurement standards. And Ms. Minnick, that 2 CFR 200 is the specific part of the uniform grant guidance, I suppose, that it's
That's exactly right. Yes.
references? Okay. And then digital communications is a new policy. Yes, Mr. Smith.
I got a promotion.
You did, Mr. Smith.
With the addition of the digital communications policy, does this now allow us to regulate or enforce or take action? I'm thinking of an incident that happened at the middle school a couple of years ago, where there was a cyberbullying thing going on, and it was the policy of that school's administration at the time that they did not regulate Instagram, or they didn't monitor it, or they didn't enforce it. And I've been open since I interviewed for this position that I'm not a fan of that I think there should be some way for us to monitor that, and if we find a student who's bullying through cyber means, that we could take disciplinary action against that student. Is that what this allows us to do?
Yes, the last sentence in the first paragraph. This policy also applies to digital communication that occurs off district premises and or using non-district equipment. So
I like that.
So it gives us, we can refer back to this policy specifically if we have to use it in discipline.
And I'm assuming there's probably some administrative guidelines
Yes.
that'll be developed around that, or maybe already have been.
Thank you.
So, all right. And then the purchasing one, that's just a redundant statement that we've been eliminating. Okay. I don't see any additional questions about that. These will come back to us for a formal vote, and we'll fill in Dr. Kinzer's position on the one so that that is formal, and then we will vote on those at our next meeting on the 23rd, I believe. All right, moving on, the 6th grade robotics course proposal. This is on for information and discussion again. We got some cursory information at our last meeting and a presentation by Mr. Bricky and Dr. Weber. And I will turn to you, Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Again, this is a proposal to bring 6 robots to the 6th grade from Kamau, along with the curriculum for those. We've provided you with some additional information this evening. There's at your seats, I believe, some information on safety-related issues. We also have presented you with an updated cost proposal, and you will see that we have eliminated the Chromebook piece that we had originally had in there, and we also are eliminating the cost associated with this official student certification. And so I will turn to Dr. Weber for any additional comments that he might have, or to the board for questions that they might have. Dr. Weber.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank Melissa Matson, Jeff Maas, John Bricky, Wanda Ciancio, and our partners at Kamau. I did not receive any formal questions in writing in the past 2 weeks on this, so I'm going to go with what came from the board meeting that we had. What I'd like you to do, if those good folks downstairs could please pull up what's on the screen, that would be fantastic. I'd like the board members to please go to the updated cost estimates for implementation, which are in your board book. The graphic that I'm showing on the screen is a bit easier for those at home to break down. I'll take you through some more information on really what makes this program tick, as well as the safety concerns that were expressed by, I believe, Mr. Cook. And Ms. Roney, I will say that I know that you have, I think, 25 years of experience in robotics, so I'm going to kind of set you up here a little bit to think about this one. These are known as personal care robots and not industrial robots. So there's a pretty sizable difference on that, so feel free anytime during the presentation to help us understand that a little bit, but I know that you have a lot of experience in this. So let's take a look at the cost. As Dr. Matthews had mentioned, we did back out a couple things, and Ms. Minnick, thank you so much. I was remiss to mention that Jill was part of every step of this process, and really without her contacting the attorneys, really helping us to understand differences between leasing and purchasing, we wouldn't be here. So the price actually went down to $85,840 for the actual upfront purchase of the robots. And you'll see what's in that package, and then the service agreement of about $14K. The year 1 service and support agreement is there. We did look at leasing. Leasing is not going to be an option, and perhaps Ms. Minnick, this would be a good time to speak. How does that impact this potential program?
Well, without the leasing, that would, leasing has two components to it. One is that Kamau, I don't believe, was particularly comfortable with that arrangement. But from our perspective as a district, leasing would require us to use general fund monies, whereas if we purchase this package, we can use our bond fund monies. So it would require that we go out to bid, and then we would purchase this curriculum package, including the robots.
Thank you. Two other updates for the board, and this is
Just real quick, does the service agreement also fall underneath the bond?
If we package it together
Okay.
as part of the bid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Questions that arose as well last week were around this notion of the certification. We have backed that out so that 100-hour certification is no longer part of the component. That was for students who were a bit older anyway. So that is no longer part of the concern. On the Chromebook aspect of it, was decided that the Chromebooks weren't needed necessarily for this program. I would like to have some kind of conversation around the pushback in general on Chromebooks from the board. We're looking at, if we purchase 600 Chromebooks to do a one-to-one pilot in 6th grade and it didn't work, that would just mean we wouldn't have to buy 600 Chromebooks the following year as part of what we're doing. When I talked to Jeff Maas, who does tech for Oakland schools, in this notion of how these devices can be used way beyond anything in a robotics program, but to communicate, to construct knowledge, to get into coding, whether it's basic coding or advanced coding, I think it is something that is worthy of further discussion. Obviously not necessary tonight, but did seem like a significant amount of concern 2 weeks ago. So those are backed out as well. That cost is struck. You have that struck. Those are struck out from the original in the board packet, as well as the 100 additional hours are struck out. Any questions on cost before we move into a little bit more about the program itself? Thank you.
Board members?
Yeah, so I'm just a little bit confused now. So since we're not leasing, then can you explain the difference between the 1 year and the 1 to 3 year cost here? I'm a little confused trying to understand that.
The 3-year cost is, and Jill, if I misspeak, but I believe the 3-year cost is just simply laddering out, or that $13,925 over 3 years. So every year it'd be a $14,000 support agreement cost.
So the total is 127, includes all of that, includes the first year plus the support for the next 2 years. Correct. That's the way I read it, yes.
I had a question about what happens in the 4th year. Are we, can we buy additional service then? I mean, obviously it's expensive equipment, so is it outdated at the end of 3 years?
No.
Well, I'm sure not, but I mean, do we have the option of buying service and support for the 4th year? And I assume so, unless it's end of life or whatever.
Maybe before we jump into that, I mean, the piece would be that the relationship that we're building with Kamau, that Bob Stee is here tonight, we've had a 9-year relationship with them. Their commitment to coming here on a bi-monthly basis to just check in with the program, this would potentially, if the board would approve this would be the first program of its kind in North America, where each one of our 6th graders is going through this experience. They want this to work just as badly as we do. But perhaps, Ms. Roney, you want to speak to that because you said something pretty quickly.
It's a robotic arm. I mean, so it's not going to be outdated. I'm sure the service and support is going to do updates on our program. So, I mean, the piece of equipment's not going to be outdated.
So I would think that after year 3 we would, or as we go through years 1 through 3, we would continue to evaluate, and at the end of year 3 we would identify, whether this was effective for our students, and if it was, we would continue the program, because it seems like a natural progression, as Dr. Weber mentioned at our last meeting, on how we are kind of laddering up our STEM experiences for students, and the hope is that this will be a jumping off point for our middle school experience that we're going to develop as well.
Okay.
So what's the useful life on these robots? Was that something that they shared with us, you think?
Ms. Roney?
I mean, this is Kamal's robots, though. I mean, they should probably know.
Yeah, we
right,
could ask
how
that
long,
question.
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And,
Be
I mean,
happy to
because
ask that.
it's not just the hardware piece, it's the software programming piece too. How many years are they gonna support?
Well, that's
and-
the purchase on the yearly purchases. If you look at on that part of it, it talks about that software refresh every year. So also included in that is the next day hot swap. So if any of the robots goes down, the next business day we'll have a new one. Phone support, then the annual refresh, verification, software, firmware upgrades, and recommissioning of eDo's with health assessment and kit inventory. So what they explained to us, Willie, was the fact that if the kid breaks it, like, misuse, whatever, throws a saddle on it and tries to ride it out of the room and snaps it, that's on us, right? If it is a piece where there is where it's just a simple manufacturing defect, Jill, my sense was that they were standing behind that very clearly.
It's gonna be a hot swap.
Yeah, until it's fixed.
Yeah, again, just if I knew like the useful life, let's say legitimately is like 7 years on these robots, okay, then I have a better understanding on what a per year cost is on this, right? And it puts these things in perspective. When you say you're gonna spend $127,000 on this program,
Certainly.
okay, you tell me how many years am I gonna get out of that program, then that
So,
tells a different story.
We can ask that question.
I would certainly be happy to ask that question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I only asked because I missed the part. I had talked to Dr. Matthews. I had thought that maybe we were already looking at leasing these instead, so I kind of,
well, if I may, my understanding from one of the very early meetings, which maybe has changed, so I want to fact check. But initially, we talked about a 5-year term, but I believe that the 3 years, after that third year, we would have the opportunity to re-up. But at that point, after, like Dr. Matthews said, that's when we would want to assess how we want to move forward, potentially negotiate whatever that 4th, 5th year service level would be, which would drive the cost of that service support.
Okay. Because at that point, we may not need quite as much support, because we would be doing.
We would have fully implemented after those 3 years.
Okay,
But I will fact check that and get that back to you.
Thank you, Jill.
If I may.
okay.
All right, if we take a look, just a couple slides, and the board has full access to these. And I'm going to pull us into, this is the base set of what we would be getting. So these are the robots themselves. I want to get to the safety part as well, I think.
This is 7 of 24 in our packet.
Yes, this is 7 of
Online.
24.
Okay, sorry.
All right. So taking a look at 11, slide number 11, really getting an idea of the fact that this is way beyond the fact of a kid playing with a robot. We're talking about math within the Cartesian plane, the scientific method, visual programming language of coding, and computational thinking and problem solving. So each one of our 6th graders, boy, girl, student with an IEP, student with a 504, dual language learner, will have over 34 touches in this curriculum in their 6th grade year, providing them the ability then to interact in these very real ways. Let's go ahead and, here's just a picture for you on 14, help you to get your head around it a little bit. It's hard when we just see a few videos, but you're seeing the collaboration here, you're seeing how that works. And the slide I want to bring you to is 17. If you could please go to slide 17. You're going to see the eDo activity cards. Think of that as simply the lesson plans that go through that they've already built up. So intro to robotics, use of joints, gripper, move, gripper, measure, triangles, quadrilaterals, polygons, draw points, segments, symmetry, Pythagoras theorem, measures in units, volume of parallelipeds, volume of cones, binary system, intro to programming, if else, nested if, truth tables, cycles with counters, cycles with exit conditions, intro to variables, variables and cycles, physics, science, words, and storytelling. I cannot overstate enough that when, as a resident of this community and a person who interacts with parents in this community on a daily basis, I continually get asked, what are we going to do to amplify opportunities for kids around coding in the world that many of our parents work in? I get pushed on things like machine learning and artificial intelligence, and from parents who want to know more. And it makes me feel exceptionally good that we're considering bringing something like this at the 6th grade level, because it also, and Ms. Murphy and I talked about this a bit, pushes us to think then what are we doing up? 7 through 12, right? I feel pretty confident 9 through 12. And we do a lot of really great STEM stuff 7, 8. However, with kids coming in with this skill set, we really need and owe it to our kids to rethink the opportunities that we're going to have there for them. And so right here, if you look at page 19, I know it's difficult to see, but you can blow it up maybe. Maybe I can. Let's see. There we go. So these lesson plans, if you take a look at the format, these are not low-level thinking activities where you simply, the kids come in, they manipulate the robot, feel good about that, and walk out. There is a clearly delineated tie-in with all of the things that we saw. One of the things that impressed me personally with Kamau in this exercise was I received a call from them on Monday. And they said, is there any way you can get us your 6th grade curriculum in math so we can be absolutely sure that everything we're designing is congruent with what the kids are teaching and learning there in Novi? So I was able to share the Atlas Rubicon 6th grade standards package, and they dug into it and are making sure and crosswalking all of that. So to me, that was a fantastic indication as well of what they're up to. Any questions on this before we get to the safety and security, which I know was important to some folks?
Other questions? Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Dr. Weber?
The final piece is the validation test or safety. So, and again, Mary Ann, you know this, like, they're robots, so they have to go through so many different measures of safety in-house. I'll show you one example of this, and you all have this. Pursue it at your leisure. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But the validation test, robot stability, mechanical anti-pinching stroke ends, collision detection, noise emission, IP grade anti-pinching gripper clamping force, software validation test. They've thought about these things. If you take a look at this picture, which is 4, you will see the big joint, small joint. And when they're talking about these pieces, the gaps that they have engineered into those joints are such that they cannot pinch a finger in there. So that gives you some idea of some of the concerns that we had. Collision detection is in each one of these robots, where actually, before it would bump into somebody, it actually stops the arm. Noise is put in there. Anti-pinching, so 65 newtons. Does anyone here know what 65 newtons is? Oh, I love it. Dr. Ruskin, so where are we at with that? About 14 foot-pounds, right? So if you want to see what that feels like, basically the grip on that is just go ahead and push on your arm with your finger like that. That's the kind of force that's coming. There was some concern at the last meeting of what kind of force, what happens if they clamp down and so on. I want you to know that the protections that are inherent in there also, it is a very, as I said, Mary Ann, called a personal care rather than an industrial robot. So I think it has a lot less of the force that the stuff that I know you're familiar with has that we use in factories around Michigan. And so that's available to the board members as well. If you have any questions on that, as Ms. Murphy I know has indicated to everyone, feel free to email me, and I'd be happy to get a response. Dr. Matthews and I are always happy to do that. I feel that we're in good hands with Ms. Minnick and Jeff Maas and Melissa and Kamau. Any other questions? Yeah.
I do. For you, Ms. Minnick, you mentioned something about bidding before. Did you say if we purchase them and we purchase it from the bond, we have to bid this out?
Because it exceeds the minimum state threshold for bidding, right?
So how does that work? I mean, you're going to bid this out. Wait, you're thinking that. I guess you're not expecting anybody to, other than Kamau, to bid.
Correct.
Bid this. So this is just kind of going through the motions, right?
Because it's state law. So we bid the specifications of this robot and of this curriculum, and through that process, we identify that yes, in fact, it is a sole source piece of equipment. Yet state law doesn't recognize sole source providers, and we have to follow the law and bid this equipment out competitively.
We believe in following the law, right, Ms. Minnick?
Understandable.
So the advantage...
But if somebody has to go to jail, it's...
I believe, Ms. Minnick, the advantage on the non-leasing, however, is the bond, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's really a key that we need to make sure the community understands, is that from an asset allocation standpoint.
Sure. And with leasing, sometimes there may be interest costs that we can avoid by purchasing it as well.
Right.
And then we end up with ownership of the equipment. at the end of outlaying all of those funds.
Until we know what the useful life is, that's probably the only piece that we don't know whether or not owning it is necessarily a good thing, right?
Okay, so
We'll
the
get
two
that-
things
we
that
can
I,
get that answer.
the two things that I heard was what happens with whether the support beyond 3 years.
Mhm.
If we could just find out some cursory information about what they typically do,
Yes,
and then
I
also
know
the life of the robots and what that looks like. Okay, and that's all the questions that I heard that we need to follow up on before it comes back to us at the next time, so.
But can I say, because I tend to ask Dr. Weber a lot of questions, I just want to let you know, I think it's fantastic. It looks like a great program. I'm really excited to see this come to fruition. I really am.
I think the function of a board is to ask questions. Big function is to ask questions, and good questions that get us there. My hope is always those questions are in good faith and with an end towards getting opportunities for our kids that they deserve. And that's what we should do. Like, we should be vetting everything that we spend our money on, and it's really not our money, it's the taxpayer money. What excites me beyond measure here is the idea of an equity of opportunity in which every single child in our community school district will benefit from this. And to me, that's what we're here for. That's awesome. So, thank you.
Okay, and as to your other statement about wanting, I'm sorry, I'm talking to you, Dr. Murphy.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
I apologize, I should have said, Dr. Murphy. So, and in terms of going forward on the Chromebook thing, it seems like that's a piece of it's kind of a separate, a larger conversation that maybe we do need to have at one point about whether or not we move to a one-on-one, and certainly whether or not that's something that our community feels like, I mean, if they have kids at home that they're sharing computers and they're not able to do some of the stuff. I mean, obviously that opportunity, I don't think is something that anybody on this board wants to deny someone, but understanding what the need is there in light of that.
That'll be a larger conversation.
Yeah,
Great
and
conversation.
be happy to have that, because really there is a huge, and you hit on it, President Murphy, a huge notion of ownership.
Yeah.
When the student believes that that device is theirs, it's a heck of a rain out there. When the student believes it's theirs and they can use that, there's also some attachment to that that's natural, that is just good. So thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
terrific.
May I add one more comment, please?
Oh.
I just want to bring to the attention of the board that because we are now going out to bid, we may run into a compressed timeline and run into that manufacturing production time of the robots. So once we can get that bid on the street and have it posted for a reasonable amount of time and then bring it back to the board, there's a small chance that we may ask you to entertain both information and action on the first reading so that we can move forward with manufacturing those robots.
I don't think
But we'll have to just see how that
Really
how
deny
that
when you
comes
tell
out.
us ahead of time like this. It's good to know.
Yeah, it's good to know that ahead of time, but certainly we wouldn't want to hold it up for next year if that's something we decide to go through with, so. Okay, terrific, thank you for giving us a heads up on that, we really do appreciate that. I'm going to suggest we take just a really brief break. Is anybody in need of one? No, okay, people are shaking their heads no, we'll go ahead then. I know it's a weird time, I kind of was feeling bad for our principal that's here. If you want to stay, that's wonderful, I just don't want you to feel like you're obligated, that's everybody else.
I know, the pressure is on. She's a new principal.
Oakland Schools budget. Dr. Matthews, I will turn to you on this. This is an information discussion item as well.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy, and I will turn to Ms. Minnick, who will kind of introduce this topic and why we as a board need to address it.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Matthews. Per the Michigan Revised School Code, Section 380.624, Subset 2, the Oakland Schools annual budget must be presented to Oakland County's 28 school districts by May 1 of each year. The district has now received 3 sets of this fiscal year 1920 proposed budget documents, a copy for the superintendent, business manager, and board treasurer. Per Section 624, Subsection 2B, the following actions are required by the district for compliance. Number 1, review the intermediate school district's general education fund operating budget, and keep in mind just the general education fund, not all of the budgets they have. Number 2, not later than June 1st, adopt a board resolution expressing support for or disapproval of the proposed budget. And number 3, submit to the ISD's Board of Education any specific objections and proposed changes to said budget. Per the same section, only the general operating fund budget requires a board resolution. However, the ISD has provided all of their draft budgets, including the special education, career-focused education, special revenue cooperative activities, debt service, capital projects, enterprise and internal service, and grant funds budgets. While not a statutory requirement, the Oakland Schools Board of Education held a designates meeting on Wednesday, April 24th. I'm sorry, that should say 2019, at 6 o'clock in the evening at Oakland Schools, providing local board designates and district administrative staff an opportunity to hear a presentation on the budget and ask questions prior to finalizing a board resolution on or before June 1. 2 resolutions are included in your board packet, one supporting the ISD budget and one disapproving. They are presented to the board tonight for information and discussion, with adoption of one or the other at the May 23rd regular board meeting. You also have in your board packet introductory letters from the superintendent of Oakland Schools and an overview of some very high-level highlights of Oakland Schools' budget. This is something that we do each and every year. It's required that each constituent district of the ISD approve the education general ed fund of Oakland Schools.
All right. Do we have questions for Ms. Minnick about the budget itself? You've got the budget in front of you. This is good.
I was going to say, as the designate, I have read parts of the budget. And it really, of this, this big document, it's the white part. The green is the special education and the yellow is something else. But I would say that the summary that Ms. Minnick sent out to us, the overview within the governance, which I think might have come from Oakland Schools anyway, but anyway, it's a good summary and overview. And one of the helpful pages in the document itself is where the footnotes are, and they show they highlight any items that are either plus or minus 25% or $100,000 swing, and there were 8 items, and none of them are questionable in any sense. So I'm comfortable with it, as I have limited expertise in Oakland County or Oakland Schools budgets, but it looked fine to me. And anyone who wants this is welcome to it.
Take a look at it. Were there anything in there that were surprising to you, or you felt you want to make us aware of in addition to what's on here?
No, the highlights that I prepared here at the bottom of this document, there's nothing surprising there. In fact, a lot of it aligns with what we will likely be proposing in our budget in terms of taxable value change, retirement cost change, in terms of percentages. They have some planned deficit spending, but they do have a plan to build that up over time in small increments. They indicate their levels of pay increases that they anticipate, yet subject to collective bargaining, and they itemize their staffing changes. And they all seem very reasonable based on the service levels that they are providing to their constituent districts.
Okay, great. Well, nice to know that they're being somewhat consistent with what we're doing at the local level here too, as well. Are there any questions for Ms. Minnick? Okay, this will come back to us on March 23rd because it has to be, May 23rd, because it has to be approved by June 1st. So if you do think of something as you go away from here, please just send it either to Dr. Matthews or Ms. Minnick, and she can respond to the board with answers on that. Otherwise, it will come back to us. I would assume that we would know whether we're going to support it or disapprove it. So if it's going to be disapproval, it'd be good if you'd let me know in advance as well. Okay, we'll move on to the Switzerland field trip. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Caitlin West, Novi High School Spanish teacher, is requesting approval for students to travel to Switzerland. This is a 9-day tour with a variety of hands-on experiences through cultural activities. Experts on the summit theme of sports and wellness will also lead discussions and workshops on building resilience, confidence, and the opportunity to build bridges among diverse communities. There will be one chaperone for every 6 students with a maximum of 20 students. The trip will cost $4,865 per person, plus incidentals and spending money. This will cover airfare, hotel, ground transportation, taxes, and most meals daily. This is an incredible opportunity for our students to gain leadership skills and network with other students from around the world. And as noted, this actually is a field trip that will occur in
the summer.
July.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Smith.
Maybe I'm missing something, but it would make sense to me. Well, let me take a step backwards. Do we incur the cost of the chaperones?
No.
No, that's built into the cost that the students pay.
It seems odd to me that the maximum number of students would exceed 18 if they're requiring one chaperone for every 6 students. You follow me? We could have 18 kids and 3 chaperones. If a 19th kid wants to sign up, now we got to pay for another chaperone, which I'm assuming isn't cheap. So I would just suggest that they cap the maximum students at either 18 or change the ratio and have one chaperone for every 6-point fractional.
Is there, I guess the question would be, maybe Educational Tours has a requirement around chaperones. We would just need to check on that to see what the requirement is, but the math should be duplicated. That makes sense.
And I also want to note that this is July 2020 that is occurring, not July 2019.
Plenty of time
Right.
to
So it's over a year old.
fundraise or do what they need to.
Oh, so you're saying the date's an error?
The date on the
Okay,
first page
I
is
gotcha.
Perfect.
So it's 2020, and there were some questions that came up. I sent those answers out to the board earlier this week, and dealing with how students will be selected and those kinds of issues. So if you have additional questions, feel free to ask. I was able to stop in when I was at the high school this week and see Miss West.
Okay.
So you've been encouraging folks to get these requests to the board in a lot quicker than normal, and clearly she's listened and got it to us well in advance.
That's she did.
Certainly
and that's
those
part of the fundraising piece too.
I think a board member should go to observe how it goes off. So
Well, if you go, you have to chaperone students.
Yeah.
I'm trying to observe. Okay, well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, it looks like a fantastic opportunity as you read through
Oh,
the
yeah.
information. I mean, the leadership skills and all of that. And I love that there's somebody that wants to spend 9 days of their
With our
summer
students.
with our students, which, you know.
The Spanish-speaking board member.
See, no problema.
Okay. We digress. Okay, if there are no more questions on the Switzerland field trip, the only thing that I heard is just the chaperone
Right.
ratio and
Yep.
making sure the math adds up on that.
Yep.
So that,
We'll follow up on that.
what that either needs to be or what it can be. And
Okay.
then the next was our orchestra camp.
Mr. Jim Van Isega, Novi High School Orchestra teachers requesting approval for Novi High School Orchestra to travel to the Howell Nature Center this year for their annual camp. Annual in the sense of this would be the first time they've ever done it. This camp has traditionally been held at Novi High School. This new location would allow for structured team building activities and is based on student and parent feedback to have an off-site location. Mr. Van Isega and 10 parent chaperones will lead approximately 100 students on this trip. Parents will drop off students at the location and pick them up. Student cost is $200 to cover food and lodging. Again, questions were asked and we were able to answer them earlier this week about, is it mandatory and the idea is that it is, participation is strongly encouraged, but there is a recognition that some students may have conflicts, for example. So we answered those questions, but if you have additional questions, we certainly can get answers to you before you're asked to vote on this at our next meeting.
Are there other questions that the board has for Dr. Matthews? I know I saw the questions that came out and the answers. I mean, it's something that a lot of our other groups do, is to go away to do this, so.
And it's non-school days. So that's
Right, non-school days, and the parents are driving them and dropping them off, and it sounds like this is a result of some parents saying it would be
Some parent
nice
feedback,
to be able to do that, so, terrific, yes.
Well, I believe Howell Nature Center, they also have those high rope courses too.
Yeah.
So I imagine they're probably going to do the
Right.
team building.
some of those kinds of things.
I was in band in high school, and I know we looked forward to going away to band camp. I mean, the team building was,
Right.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I just feel sorry for them. Their arms, 24 hours of can be brutal.
All right. Well, it sounds like another great opportunity for our students. I will go ahead and move on to our next opportunity for comments from the audience. This is the comments that you can make about anything in our jurisdiction. It doesn't necessarily have to be on our agenda this evening. If you would like to make a comment, we would just ask that you move to the podium, address the board for up to 5 minutes, and that you would fill out a green card. Seeing no one rush the podium, we will move on to our superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
And not to disappoint the board, but I have no report this evening because we have a work session, and so I want to save time for that work session. So.
Okay, terrific. Our administrative reports?
I do not have a report this evening.
We'll hear from you in the work session as well, I'm sure. Dr. Kinzer?
I have a report, but I will keep it brief for the same reason. Last Thursday evening, I was fortunate to travel to Oakland Schools to attend the Outstanding Educator of the Year Awards. So all of the nominees across the county were recognized, including Jody Balconi and Shannon Hadley. And then our three winners were introduced by administrators in their building, and then they each presented a nice speech. So Mr. Baker introduced Mr. Canise, and then Mr. Canise spoke. His speech was filled with humility, which was wonderful. That's his personality. That's just who he is. He certainly expressed appreciation for the recognition, but more importantly, for the gift he receives daily of being able to teach a subject he loves to kids that he cares deeply about. So it was an inspiring evening. And as a side note, Mr. Gordon was there as well because his wife was a middle school nominee in Clawson.
Oh, that's great.
Saturday, I was back at Oakland Schools for our final job fair of the year. So we've attended job fairs at Michigan State, the University of Michigan, Oakland Schools, and seen a lot of candidates, many of them of very high quality. We have a number of positions that are currently posted. Our administrators are busy interviewing, and you can expect to see new hires on our personnel reports soon.
Great.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. I've been busy, I know. All right, and Dr. Weber?
I have a deep desire to keep the Carino's date night going. You made the choice to endure here. So you have 3 kids, you said, right? Let's just keep rolling then. Resilience. Last Wednesday at the middle school, really fortunate with this parent and district mental health committee, and a number of board members have been there on a number of occasions, and a number of you were at the film. So we showed resilience, the biology of stress. We had about 70 attendees at the middle school, and the joy of, when we talked about trauma and we talked about third grade reading, was when I saw a couple parents who were there, Bike to School at Deerfield was Wednesday, and I said, oh, you were at the film, what did you think? And they said, well, one, we went just because it seemed interesting, and I left there feeling very lucky that we didn't have a significant amount of that in our own family. However, learning the impact of these pieces on the kids that our sons play with, that they like, understanding that was very helpful. So very grateful for our community for coming in and believing and understanding that our kids are far more than a test score, and that the question we need to start asking about students who struggle is not what's their problem, but what happened to them. Like, what has occurred in their life to cause the kind of behavior or reactions that we're seeing. If as adults in a system, if the school board and our principals and our teachers and our teams can understand that should be our first question to ask, I think we will be miles ahead in helping kids. Also Sunday, attended, NEF had a fantastic event, and whoever dialed up the weather for it, I think it was the nicest day we've had in like 8 months. So it was a cherry blossom festival at Tollgate Farm at MSU. And it was really funny because before they did this, 25 years of research at Michigan State University has shown this is the ideal weekend for the cherry blossoms to come out. Sure enough, they were 2 weeks behind. There were 3 cherry blossoms that actually had come out. It was so funny because everyone was like going up to the one cherry blossom and taking a picture of it. It was a wonderful event. Jason Smith and so many people from NEF were there. Our Japanese community was there. They had hoped for 150 attendees. I was told there were over 300 attendees that day. So another thing that really helps our district obviously maintain a financial backing and a strong one is the fact that many of the families that we have coming and moving in are indeed Japanese families who choose Novi as their preferred place to be. And we're grateful for that. And it shows, again, the NEF is just really touching as many different folks as possible. And if there are a few board members that'd be interested at some point to hear your feedback on resilience, I know Mr. Mena was there, Bobby, you were there, Danielle, you were there, your husband was there. Like anyone, like always interested to get that feedback on it. So thank you very much.
All right, next we have our committee reports. We have a legislative committee?
We don't. We are meeting on May 15th.
Oh,
So
okay.
we'll be happy to report at the next
Okay,
meeting.
fantastic. Well, upcoming meeting, I guess I
Yes.
should say. So I do not believe there have been other committees that have met. Oh, except for maybe your committee.
No.
No, we got another one coming up soon.
Oh, okay, so we've had a little break. Okay, great. Well, we don't have to delay. We'll go to board communication. Are there things that board members would like to share about the last couple weeks in the district? Yes?
Well, actually, I was out of the district.
Oh.
Saturday, I did a little sharpening of the saw. I was up in Lansing at the MASB, Michigan Association of School Boards. That's their headquarters, apparently. And I had signed up so I recently completed all the 100 level classes. And for the hundreds of people who watch this video, because I know everybody here knows, the 100 classes, I think, are more like the nuts and bolts, blocking and tackling of what board members do. And, you know, they're pretty clear about here's your lane and don't go out of it. So that's the message that we get from those level classes. So I took a couple 200 level classes on leadership, which were very good. And I think the message was leadership is really empowering others to become leaders. So it was really a good day. It was a full day. I had 2 classes, so that was 6.5 hours, I guess. But I will say, Dr. Weber, there was a member from the Romulus School District, and she specifically asked me how our showing of resilience went. And because I missed it, I couldn't tell her, but I told her I would update her.
We can get you the DVD, or Danielle, or Willie, or Bobby can
Right. So anyway, and I guess that's it for me.
Great.
Thank you.
Oh, great. Good saw sharpening.
3 times quick.
Yeah, okay. Other board members?
I just had a question, and I don't need it answered tonight, and I'm okay getting an email or a phone call from somebody at the table that might be able to clue me in. But since I haven't sat here a full year, maybe right about a year, yeah, it's been a year, okay. I'm just curious as to the last time we had a report or an assessment done, and who did it with regards to our public safety within the schools. In light of some of the news from this week, I'm just, and then I've had an incident where I was picking my daughter up from the high school, and it was after school, and the match was canceled due to weather, and I don't have a security badge anymore to get into the building, so I was standing at the front door, and some kids came out, and I went in. So, there wasn't, the attendance office wasn't there, there wasn't really any security or teachers or monitors, but the building was full of a lot of kids still, and I'm just walking around. So I'm just wondering how that plays out.
We will get information.
Okay.
Okay. So,
that's it.
Good question. Other board members? Yes, Dr.
So in
Lester?
regards to resilience, it was a fantastic showing, and as Dr. Weber said, I think it's a great opportunity for parents who face those challenges or potentially don't to understand all the kids in our district. I loved the collaboration with the other groups that were there. I think that people were able to hear what Novi Youth Assistant is and does, although you walk by it at the Civic Center in their little office, and I think unless your kiddo really utilizes those services or you're a mentor like Tom, you wouldn't know. So I do think that was a great outreach to parents who didn't know what that was, and maybe get more volunteers involved with that. There's some great information out there. There is some wonderful TED Talks, and I think that there's a book. Dr. Weber, what is it called?
How Children Succeed.
Okay.
And that was by Paul Tuff that helps with that. And then another book that is on my list, and let me just grab it really quick, and I know many of your readers, is The Body Keeps the Score. And that is Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. And, Danielle, it was your idea to show it kind of on a larger screen, and I think we stumbled across something that could be the middle school is such a beautiful space for that, and perfect. So going forward, I think that's something as a community we could think about a little bit even more, is bringing people together. And I know Youth Assistant signed up like 6 volunteers that night that they didn't expect, and Novi Community Coalition was able to spread their news as well.
Yes, that was a great opportunity. Also, a big shout out, I feel like I'm on TV, it's my daughter's birthday. I have twin daughters who are 14 today, so since I'm sitting here, and I'm sure they're sitting in front of the TV watching this, we're going to tell them happy birthday, right?
Yeah.
For there, Mr. Mena. And thirdly, speaking of retention in the robotics course, can I just retain my son? So that he can take the course next year?
We will make
We can make that happen.
Harrison.
Yeah.
All right, I'll
My
do
son's
it.
going
I'll
to
make the
7th
call
grade,
tonight.
So we're going to keep him.
Yeah.
So we can play with the R.
Bobby, one last thing real quick, please.
Okay, certainly.
I want to echo on something that Dr. Ruskin said that involves our community and Novi Youth Assistance. And our board met this past Tuesday evening, and we got a report from Officer Warren, who is of service to our district and our buildings, and she's obviously a public safety officer. And she filled us in as board members on a program where public safety officers mentor and spend time with youth, and some of the youth that have been identified as being potentially at risk. And it was so cool to hear 11 different officers' stories with the kids that they're working with. And it's not, I'm just going to meet with you for an hour every 6 months. It's really cool. And it's just an example of something Dr. Weber said, where we've got this really great stuff with the library, and we work with the, Chief Malloy in the public safety office, and there's just some cool stuff going on.
Yeah.
And Into the Woods was good too. I know I wasn't
Yes.
the only person there that saw that play at the high school.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
So, that's it.
Fantastic performances by all. Just a little segue, because Julie Warren came and spoke to our mental health dialogues group also, and really shared her heart and her passion for the kids that are really struggling, even to the point of, thinking of hurting themselves.
Right.
And was really realistic about the numbers, and has done a lot of research around that and some professional development around that herself, and really has a passion for just making the community more aware of the signs, so that even your friend who's maybe in 7th grade knows the signs, so that if you're displaying those signs, they know to tell someone. And so it was very powerful. She's got a real heart, and has done some research on a father actually whose child at the age of 12 committed suicide, that does a lot of speaking, and it's so we're just kind of dialoguing about what that can mean for this community, and what that can mean for not just for the school district, but for the greater community, and how that mental health dialogues group fits in with that, and what we want to do with it, and how the school district can maybe be a conduit for that. So some really good stuff going on. All right, if no one else has anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
It's been moved by Mr. Smith and supported by Mrs. Hood. All those in favor of adjourning, we will move into a work session afterwards, but we'll take a brief break. Please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We are adjourned for the evening. We will take it is 8:42. Can we be?